Hello, I'm the Chaser, and this is my first devlog video of my Java game engine. I started programming about 2 months ago, so it's really early on in development. I like to create everything myself, so the only libraries that I use are LWJGL to be able to use OpenGL, and a small library that loads PNG files to the GPU. The first thing that I created was the fog, as you can see when I move away from something. The fog gives a nice atmospheric effect, and it makes it so that you're unable to see the chunk loading because my terrain is made out of chunks, which are loaded from files every time you go further. Um, and at every moment there are a few chunks rendered with a maximum of 9 chunks. So this gives a really big advantage. So for the first big advantage is that you don't have to load everything in your memory at the start of the game. The second big advantage is that you don't have to render everything at the same time, because that will make your game really slow and will give no visual advantage. The second big thing that I created in my game is lighting. I have diffuse lighting and directional lighting, which you can see as the sun. As you can see, the sun goes up and down. I can change pretty much everything about it. For example, the intensity and where it comes from, like the direction, the angle that it comes from, and as the color as well, so that I can, for example, make it a little bit more green, so that every green in the scene will be more visible, better visible. Oh shit. Okay, and the second thing is you can see here is point lights. Point lights are you specify the point where the light comes from, and then the light shines in every possible direction from that point. So there's a point about here and a point about here, and the first point is green and the second point is should be blue, but because of the green it's a little bit affected by the green, and that makes it like more purple-ish. And as you can see, it's projected on the tree here, which gives a nice effect. The only problem with these lights is that they're like per pixel lights instead of the sun, which is a per vertex light, and this makes it really expensive for my game. At the moment, there's only 5 of these point lights possible per shader, so per chunk, but I will definitely be changing that because the chunks came out a little bit bigger than I expected them to be. So the last thing I added is frustum culling. This is a technique where objects that are not visible to the camera are not sent to the GPU. As you can see when I run around in this forest, yeah, well, you can't really see it, but the number of rendered trees decreases depending on how many trees that I see. For example, I'll read it to you because you can't really see it with the software that I use to record. At the moment there are 79 rendered trees and 122 trees that are not rendered. When I get like, for example, like this, oh wait, I'll get this one tree. Okay, now there's one tree rendered and the 200 trees are not rendered. This works of course with every object, and massively increases the it massively increases the speed of the game. For example, if instead of rendering 200 trees, I now have to render only 1. And this works for every object. This basically works for every object. Um, okay, so the last thing that I wanted to mention that I created is a mesh builder class. It's a small class that does a lot actually. For example, if you have these three meshes like these, every mesh is a different mesh, but it would be really expensive if you have like 100 of these meshes and you want to render them all um, in different buffers and different shaders. It would that is very expensive for performance. And so what I created was a small class that makes these three meshes into one mesh with an offset, of course. So what you do? You create a mesh builder class. You create a mesh builder object, and then you give it meshes and meshes and meshes with a certain offset, and then it just creates one big mesh out of these meshes and renders them and it renders it as one mesh. But it looks like there are three different meshes. Um, you can yeah, you can't really see it, but the frustum culling says that at the moment there are two objects rendered, which is of course right, since there are this tree and this one mesh of these three planes. I also added normal mapping, but that isn't included at the moment because it kind of slows down my game. I have to find a way that it doesn't slow down everything else. Because at the moment it really does slow down pretty much everything. But I'll probably have that done by next week. So this was my devlog, and this was my first devlog actually, and I hope to make this one of many. I hope you liked it, and see you later.